right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. I'm Ben Snyder, joined as always by Brandon Crossland. Brandon, how's it going tonight? We got a lot to discuss from the Brickyard weekend.
You're definitely right, Ben. A lot to discuss from Indianapolis, both from the Motor Speedway and the Raceway Park. Just a little distance from each other, but a lot happened there for the NASCAR weekend, and there's plenty to talk about. So I should stop wasting time, and we should get into it.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. Plenty of potential changes, I think, as well, and we'll get into that. I was expecting to have kind of our open segment on the Xfinity Series, but after how the Cup race ended yesterday, I have some thoughts, Brandon. I'm sure you do as well. I was almost late getting back to the show. Getting back to my office for the show here because I was stuck in my office at work, getting back to my office in the house here because I was caught up in Twitter discussion. Everybody very fired up still, even 24 hours after the race, and very strong opinions. But it's been all pretty much respectful and allowed for some back and forth, which I think is a rarity on X/Twitter these days. So credit to everybody there. Yeah, and I think it's important to have these conversations here. So we'll continue that conversation here in just a moment. But first, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. If I can find the graphic, there we go. Thank you all so much for your continued support of what we're doing here at Grid Network. And if you like what you see tonight, you can consider joining these fine individuals here through our Patreon and help us on our goal to getting to the track on a more regular basis and continuing to grow our motorsports media outlet here. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can also visit the Buy Me a Coffee link or donate through YouTube Super Chat. And as always, regardless, please follow us on social media, hit the bell icon so that you're notified when you subscribe to us every time we host a new show or upload a new video to this channel. Now, Brandon, like I said, I've been going back and forth on Twitter the last hour or so with our colleague Alex and his Gay Racing Podcast co-host Zach. And again, very good discussion. I think some good points being brought up all around here. But I want to start with a conversation that I think has been had over the last several years. And actually, again, just within the last hour, I got a notification David Land uploaded a new video asking, is the Brickyard 400 a crown jewel? Obviously, I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, so I'm curious to hear what his opinions are on the whole situation. But Brandon, I know you obviously think very highly of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and all the history there. In your opinion, given the context of what has happened with this race, again, I know Matthew Owens was on this show a couple years ago and talking about the statute of limitations on 2008, but we had the tire debacle all those years ago. We had a race against darkness in 2017 that left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, and then we have a finish like this today, after we came back from a 3-year absence where this race wasn't even on the schedule at all. In light of all of that, do you think the Brickyard 400 deserves crown jewel status for the NASCAR Cup Series?
Well, it's certainly, the crown is not shining near as much as it did since we last left it, especially in my opinion, even with the darkness problem in 2017, to me, that was like the last great Brickyard 400 that I remember personally. Maybe I have some delusions of grandeur. Maybe it wasn't as great as I remember, but 2017 and previous, that feels like the shinier moments of the Brickyard 400. And I told Matthew Owens, either him or you, I can't remember which, but that I think with the Brickyard 400 coming back now, it's nowhere near, of course, it's golden days, but it's kind of in repair right now. So it's got some reparation. It's got some repairing to do through these next few years. I don't think it's going to be taken off the schedule at all. I mean, they just started it. They're so hyped about it. They've got all the marketing behind it. I don't think there's a chance it's coming off the schedule anytime soon now that they brought it back, and fans have been harping on it for years and years. But yes, it's definitely not, I have to admit, as much as I love Speedway Indiana and I love that track and I love the people that work there too. I mean, they're just some of the nicest people probably in motorsports. I haven't met too many people, but a lot of the people that work there, it's like a generational sort of thing, the people who wear those yellow uniforms. But as far as being a crown jewel event, it's definitely lost its luster for sure. But I think it's in repairing stages, and I think it could get back to a better state. How it does that, I have no idea.
Well, let me be very clear. I am totally sympathetic to people who want to argue this is the fourth crown jewel. I want to argue that this is the fourth crown jewel. I think for a while it was the fourth crown jewel. But what I can't wrap my head around, what I can't reconcile, is the idea that NASCAR thought that this race was so insignificant that they removed it from the schedule, or at least converted it to a road course race on the schedule at best for 3 years. If this were truly a crown jewel race, truly a top 4 race on the calendar that drivers and team owners and fans respect more than any other event, save for the other crown jewels, I guess, then why did we take it away? And I know the answer to that is going to be, well, the fans were talking about how much the racing absolutely stunk and how the grandstands were empty and everything. But I can't help but think back to those first 2 road course races. The last one that we got in 2023, I felt like was pretty straightforward, and Michael McDowell won that race straight up, all pretty much clean throughout. But the way those last 2 races ended, I just couldn't help but think to myself, as we were getting those constant crashes in overtime and 5 wide dive bombs going into turn 1, and the second year you had Ross Chastain taking the access road and coming back out and continuing to race for the quote-unquote lead after that. And I'm just thinking to myself, the Brickyard 400 died for this? Are you kidding me?
Me too. Yeah, those were my same thoughts. And I was like, why? If it's so important, why did we leave it?
And listen, all due respect to AJ Allmendinger and Tyler Reddick and Michael McDowell, any win at Indianapolis is special. Don't get me wrong.
But they didn't win the Brickyard.
They did not win the Brickyard. They did not win it. I don't think anybody is arguing the Verizon 200 at the Brickyard was a crown jewel race.
Well, the official record will hold that they did win the Brickyard as it was that year. But I mean, it's not the same event.
It's and how do you like that? Like, for people that, again, I'm with you that Indianapolis is special regardless of whether or not you're just turning left or you're turning left or right. It is a special facility. There's no argument there. You can go over to IndyCar. They run a Grand Prix on the infield road course there. In fact, and here's a perfect example. Alexander Rossi, at this moment, I'm sure his career is not over. He will continue to have a chance to add to this. But right here, right now, his last IndyCar win was at the IMS road course. Do you think Alexander Rossi thinks that his last IndyCar win is as special, as life-changing, as career-altering as his first IndyCar win was?
Not a chance.
That would be an absurd argument to make. You're exactly. So the road course, I mean, again, I'm not saying that it's not special to cross that yard of bricks as a race winner, but Kevin Harvick said it himself. It's embarrassing for our series that we have resigned ourselves to the road course, that we're not on the oval. And Harvick lost the last 3 years of his career. He lost an opportunity to add to his Brickyard 400 total. Denny Hamlin, this is the only crown jewel race that he's missing. They took 3 opportunities away from him in the twilight of his career to complete his crown jewel set. So I that's what I can't reconcile, that we took this race away, and now that it's back, and I hate that it ended the way it did, because we were setting up for an all-time classic finish. I mean, that top 3 with how Larson was closing, and if Blaney could have held him off, and then can Brad Keselowski do what Joey Logano did in Nashville and stretch the fuel farther than anybody expected he'd be able to? I mean, it had it all. And then we get a caution with 2 to go, or 3 to go, whatever it was. And then we have an overtime restart. And again, I'm sorry, I'm dying on the hill. If we're going to do this, you get 1 attempt. I don't care if you wrecked in turn 1. I don't care if you wrecked coming to take the green flag. If the pace car pulls in, that is an attempt. And if you can't run 2 laps, then we're done. Because it just continues to spiral out of control. And the race couldn't even finish on network television. The 30th anniversary return to the Brickyard 400 had to get bumped to USA because of some, I don't know. I know it was a big news day. The big news broke 4 hours earlier, but we were hearing that some local NBC affiliates weren't even showing news. They were showing the local news or paid programming. It wasn't like it was Lester Holt coming on with breaking news, nightly news, national news. It's just a very messy situation. And just real quick, Brandon, it's a very messy situation. Obviously, you can point to start times as well. That's part of the conversation, but I hate that it ended the way that it did. And it, again, I think on what should have been a day of celebration, but that this race comes back, we're left talking about this instead.
Yeah, that does put a stinker on it, the 30th anniversary, but I know that phrase a lot. They'll say next is your local news, except on the West Coast. So that's where we saw that problem, was the West Coast. It wasn't time for their 5 o'clock news yet or what have you. So I think that's kind of a discrepancy there. That's the reason why they had the paid programming and stuff like that, because for the East Coast and Central, it was time for 5 o'clock news. And of course, the big news story of the day was going on, but it wasn't as much breaking, like we have to break the main feed. It was just, this is the time they told NBC that you would get your local news except on the West Coast back.
Yeah. And again, I have no experience working in television production. I know a lot of people that are on Twitter do, and some of them responded to some of our tweets saying, hey, this is just how it is. But again, and I'm just asking honestly here, I can think of several times where the 6 o'clock news has been preempted because a sporting event runs long. I can think of several occasions where, CBS has to push back 60 minutes because there's an NFL game running long. And I know that, the NFL is king over everything else. And, maybe that's a slightly different situation there. There are certainly bigger ratings at stake, but, and it works both ways. I'm sure there are regular loyal viewers of your 6 o'clock local news that would have been annoyed that a silly little car race that couldn't get finished was cutting into that. So I get it, but it's just, again, it's a very unfortunate situation how it all played out.
Yeah, and we had to go over to USA and record Law and Order SVU just to get the rest of the race.
Yeah,
that happens. That happened another time before this year. I think it was New Hampshire.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
Right, it ended up becoming Law and Order SVU at that point.
Yeah, I miss NBCSN, and again, that's another constant source of frustration these days. Good to see our own Joe Samaniego in the chat so far. The Daytona 500, Coke 600, and Brickyard 400 Crown Jewel events have had lousy finishes. Hopefully, the Southern 500 is better. I saw somebody else make that point as well. And they're absolutely right. In a season that has had a lot of memorable moments, the Daytona 500 was a buzzkill. At least that one ended at 500 miles this year. And Brandon, again, you and I were talking backstage before the show. I talked with Zach about this a little bit as well, because in complete fairness, I think a lot of people say Daytona's lost its luster. When was the last time we had a green flag regulation finish of a Daytona 500?
Well, we were talking about it backstage before the show. I guess you have to go back 7 years ago to Kurt Busch and Stewart-Haas winning in 2017. Is that right?
Unless I'm forgetting something, because 18 was marred by overtimes, and of course the controversial finish with Dillon and Almirola. 19, I think, had multiple. 20 obviously had multiple before the Ryan Newman accident. I believe 21 and 24 finished in regulation, but we got a wreck on the final lap. So we had the controversy of when the field was frozen. They gave the win to McDowell and Byron respectively in those years, but I think there were some Chase Elliott fans and some Alex Bowman fans that weren't quite convinced, and that was a whole mess. Kyle Busch will tell you he won the Daytona 500, and shout out to Brad Keselowski, by the way, because Brad Keselowski tweeted that he won the Brickyard 400. So that happened in 23, and I think 22 went into overtime as well. So yeah, 7 years it's been. So I don't know. I mean, again, I don't want to get too sidetracked here with overtime, because we could spend a whole nother 20 minutes on that, but I don't know.
I'd have to start calling this grid overtime.
Might
fit a little more, huh?
I don't know about that one. But yeah, man, I don't know. I feel like normally I can pull my thoughts together and sound coherent and kind of draw it to a nice conclusion. I'm just, my mind still 24 hours later is just going a million miles a minute here. I feel like I've said a lot. I feel like there's still a lot to say. I don't know what I want to say though, as we're 15 minutes into the show. I mean, it's very frustrating to be talking about an absolute buzzkill of a finish once again. And Ryan Preece, to his credit, I think clarified this morning that he had partially run out of fuel as well, so that's why he couldn't get going. But again, I mean, if we're going to do this, if we're going to have unlimited overtime attempts, if Ryan Preece spins in and crashes in that spot of a track on lap 74, do you think they wait almost a full lap to see if he can get going before they throw the caution? So why did we treat it differently just to see? And by the time they come back around, Larson's already taken the white flag.
Yeah. That's what I'm most frustrated about is the whole Ryan Preece deal. And just when they decided to throw the yellow, how convenient it was for Larson to be ahead. I mean, I can't make sense of that. We've seen it in other places where, I mean, in any other case, I feel like that would have been reason to do another overtime. By that same logic, I was waiting for yellow. We need to do another overtime.
Yeah.
And I would have much rather had another overtime than, why are they waiting to pull the yellow? Why, like he's clearly not going anywhere. Why are we keeping us in suspense? Like, why would you let the field get to the white flag?
And it was very reminiscent of 2017 when, ironically, the same Hendrick number 5 car, Casey Kane, was leading the race and the field was wrecking behind him. I understand you had darkness to consider that year as well, but we didn't have that yesterday, so I think that added to fans' frustration. There was no reason they couldn't throw the caution immediately. I know some drivers were close on fuel, but they waited for him to get to the overtime line, and then the caution came out, as we knew it would have to. We knew it was going to have to for Ryan Preece here. So again, it all just goes back to being consistently inconsistent. And again, this came up in our conversation as well. See, again, there's a million thoughts in my head, and they're just popping into my mind at random times here. But the Southern 500 came up, and I still remember. I think Shaun White gave the command that day, like, get ready for the final Mountain Dew Southern 500. They were going to take Darlington off the schedule, or at least reimagine Darlington's place on the schedule. And for 4 years, it was the Dodge Charger or Avenger or Challenger, whatever, 500. They took the Southern out of a name and then put it back in. Now it's back on its Labor Day date once again. So they messed with that tradition a little bit over the years. But again, I just would argue that was a mistake too. If this is a crown jewel race, and I think the Southern 500 is certainly a crown jewel race, I think it was a mistake to mess with it in that way. So, again, I guess we truly are just resigned to being consistently inconsistent in this sport with how we treat our things here. But this is why I struggle with, because I heard some people say, well, why can't we just have 5 crown jewels? Why couldn't we? Because people, I think, have argued for Spring Talladega, because I think if you had to pick a 4th before 1994, a lot of people would say the Winston 500 or Talladega would be up there. But again, I know we're not a stick and ball sport, but tennis has its 4 majors, right? Golf has its 4 major events. I don't know that there's room for more than 4 crown jewel races, because when you start getting, if you go all the way up to 6, because some people would say, if Homestead was still the finale, I think my friend Mikey was saying that as well. He at one time thought of the Ford 400 as a crown jewel, because Homestead always put on great racing. That's where we determine our champions. And again, Brandon, I see you're shaking your head there. I don't know if you have to agree with that, but I think there's an argument to be had that it means more than just a typical 1.5-mile race.
It sure did, yeah.
Used to mean more than it means now.
But you'll never catch me putting Fall Phoenix as a crown jewel nominee.
And that's the counter argument, is the fact that we've moved the finale date. We've talked about rotating the finale date. So I think Daytona 500, Southern 500, I'm with Dale Jr. on this. I would say World 600 at the bare minimum, Coca-Cola World 600. I wish they would put World back in the 600 name. Yeah. I think those 3 are non-negotiable. So what's your 4th? And if your 4th crown jewel race was at one time in not too distant history not deemed significant enough to stay on the calendar, I don't know. I have a hard time passing up on the Bristol night race in terms of, what I get excited for, what I feel like is a special feeling when you see a driver cross the line and win that race, and what that race means, and how fans and drivers get excited for that venue and that facility. I don't know. It's hard for me to look at the Brickyard 400 in its current state and say, okay, what does this race have going for it besides the track that would give it crown jewel status? I don't know
Nothing.
what the answer is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being more and more convinced. I still think it's on the hospital bed right now of crown jewels, and
yeah,
if there's anything they could do to revive it, this was the first step to bring it back at least. But you got to get the tradition flowing again. And I want to be positive here. The crowds for the facility, given of how much it's able to hold, in my opinion, look pretty stellar for what we've called this race in the past, and for not having it for so long. I think that was a really solid crowd for what's been going on.
It definitely is. And look, I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not that delusional. We're not going back to 1994 when 1 million people wanted a ticket for this race, and literally twice as many cars as could start the race. I mean, literally 86 cars tried to qualify for that race.
Yeah.
Like, we're never going back to that. Never going back to it. So I'm not saying we need to fill the facility to the brim with 300,000 race fans, and we need, 10 drivers going home that aren't qualified. I mean, we can't even get that from a Daytona 500 these days. It's just, times have changed. But this track, and this is the last point I'll make, and then we can move on to the series that we normally cover on this show. This track demands, no, scratch that. This track commands. It not only deserves, it commands reverence and respect that no other track can say is equal. Not even Daytona. When you think of Indianapolis on a world stage, and NASCAR being in a unique position that they are very rarely in, of being a guest of the facility, that's IndyCar's home. We are a guest of the facility when we enter those gates. And the fact that we have had so many controversial moments, controversial finishes, clown show finishes, I don't think you can deny those couple of road course races and double overtime chaos. I don't know how many overtimes 2017 went into. Probably should have gone into at least one more if we didn't have the rain delay that forced us up against the sunset clock.
Let's put it this way: if you're going to go to Augusta National Golf Course, you don't need to go there and put on a dirt bike show. I mean, you don't need to go, make a mockery of the place by the performance you're putting on. I think Matthew, when I was talking about Indianapolis with him last weekend, I think he either this, or I think maybe he quoted this in one of his videos about this going on, of what Bill France said to all the drivers in '94 before in the drivers meeting about what they were about to do. It was like, you were on the world stage right now, and you were going to represent this whole entire sport, this whole company. Put on a good show. Like, don't, what you do here will determine whether we can even come back, sort of, in so many words. Like, he understood the magnitude of, you better not mess this up, because you can make a mockery of this whole sport in one day.
Yeah, well, and I still remember after the finish we got in 22, Matt, and I don't think he feels this way now. I know he doesn't feel this way now, because I've gone back and forth having this conversation with him as well. But he tweeted after that finish, NASCAR should never be allowed at IMS again. They've made a mockery of this place and don't deserve to be there. And look, I mean, I can't say, I mean, I probably wasn't 100% of the way there last night. I've had 24 hours to cool down now. I would say I was probably 80% of the way there. And I still stand by what I tweeted. I said, listen, if this is how it's going to be every time we come here, where we're dealing with a controversy like this, and the finish leaves a sour taste in people's mouths, and you've got people that are screaming on social media that, oh, they held the caution for the Golden Boys, but they could give him the race, and I'm not buying into any of that. I mean, I think NASCAR has been consistently inconsistent for years on how they throw a caution flag in those situations. But if we're going to take the unlimited overtime crapshoot show that we put on frequently to Indianapolis, I feel like in a lot of ways we are making a mockery of Indianapolis, and maybe we shouldn't be there.
Yeah, you don't understand where you are. Don't bring your circus to Augusta.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And do it properly.
Yes, and again, we were about a minute away from having a very different conversation.
Yeah.
Yesterday and tonight, and I think it would have been very positive. And I'm very glad that we're back on the oval. And I am fully with you, Brandon. I hope that we are on the oval for years to come. If we are at IMS, we need to be on the oval.
All it takes really is just drivers behaving. That you can't get them to behave themselves though, but all it takes is just realizing, okay, I'm not in a position to win anymore. Just behave themselves. Or if it was Ryan Preece that was running out of fuel, I don't know. I wish I could go back and see a replay of exactly what happened to his car. I don't know if we have that footage anywhere to look at online, but like, if you realize you're out of fuel, get off the race course. I mean, get out of the way. Realize it's over and get out of the way. There's some comments on your X post of where you said lots of positive and constructive discussion in the last 24 hours. I just wanted to say those as my closing bits. CPK Diecast commented, "The Brickyard is the McRib."
I saw that.
And then I Am Walt responded to that, said, "First thought was McDonald's was also the first car to drop out of the Brickyard 400. There's probably something ironic in there somewhere." That's Jimmy Spencer's 27 McDonald's car in 94.
Yeah, so I mean, again,
I think McRib. It's back.
Yeah, I'm happy we're back. I wish we could be having different conversations. But again, like I said this on Wrap Up yesterday, Mike Bagley put that poll out, and almost 3/4 of race fans selected unlimited when the options were 0, 1, 2 to 4 unlimited attempts. And if he's giving you up to 4 and it's still not good enough, and you say unlimited, like and 3/4 of the fan base is saying that, then I can't deny I'm in the minority. So I understand this is where we're at. But I mean, I don't know. Can we just, like, for crown jewel races? And again, I know we were talking about this backstage as well, Brandon. Bristol Night Race doesn't have a number of a name. Nope. You know, the spring race, or I know it was a Food City 500 for years. The entitlement sponsors change every year now, it seems. I think it's still Food City.
Food City has been very, very loyal there in Knoxville.
But that race implies 500 laps. The Bristol Night Race, the heck with it. Have as many overtimes as you want. I'm still not going to be a fan of it in principle, but I'm more okay with it there than Kyle Busch crossing the finish line at Daytona at mile number 500 and not winning the race, or Brad Keselowski crossing the start-finish line at the Brickyard in the Brickyard 400 and not being the winner of the race. That's just me.
To me, that's getting down to semantics. I
understand, but I'm just, again, for like, maybe we're already consistently inconsistent enough. Can we limit it to 1 attempt for crown jewel races only? Like, I'm trying to give you as many concessions as possible here.
I like that.
I don't want these races to fall into being, whatever the heck we got yesterday or what we've gotten at Daytona in recent years. Because I think, again, we're talking all about the Brickyard, obviously, because it was a Brickyard race weekend. But I think a lot of people feel the same way about Daytona. Like, look, this is supposed to be our biggest race of the year, and we're making a mockery of ourselves because we can't run so much as 2 green flag laps at the end of a 500-mile race. So there's a lot of nuance to this. There's a culture problem in the sport. I think it's not all, I don't even know if any of it's IMS's fault, but it is what it is. And it's just so frustrating that we were so close to a good finish. And yet we spent the first half hour of this show talking about the current state of the relationship between NASCAR and IMS, which is what we were talking about the last 3 years.
Well, let's put it this way. There's always next year, and we're about to hit 30 minutes here, so we might as well just call it a day.
There is. And I'll end it on this, and you end it on a positive note here. I felt very similar with how the 2023 Indianapolis 500 ended. We came back this year, and I was saying to myself, as I watched the front 5 or 6 battle for the lead, battle for the top positions, I said, anybody in this top 6, I'm okay with winning this race. Let's just please go green. Let's not have to deal with what we had to deal with last year. And they did it. They got us a fantastic finish, and Joseph Newgarden went back-to-back, silenced any doubters he might have had from 23. Thoroughly deserving champion, quickly becoming a legend of Indianapolis. Hopefully we can have a similar conversation about the Brickyard 400 next year. One more thing before we move on. Let's get to Joe's comment here. Is it possible for new race to get crown jewel status? NASCAR wanted Auto Club to be the new Labor Day tradition, but it didn't work. Where does the street race fall? I mean, Chicago's, I think, done a good job at becoming a big deal, but I don't think it's, I mean, we're 2 years in. I think it's way too early to start putting it on the same level of all the tradition of Daytona and Charlotte and Darlington and even Indy. I mean, this was 30 years here at Indianapolis. And many, many more decades further than that for the actual facility. Chicago's city streets that they set up for a weekend, and we host a race there, and then they tear it down. And we've only been doing that for 2 years. I think it's got a long way to go before it even reaches, Long Beach IndyCar status, let alone NASCAR Crown Jewel status.
Yeah, it definitely takes half a lifetime or even a lifetime to even make a crown jewel. So yeah. Nowhere near it yet.
All right, we move on now to the Xfinity Series race, and Riley Herbst leading a 1-2 finish for Stewart-Haas Racing, and credit to the Xfinity Series, by the way. Fantastic racing, fantastic finish, even with a package that I wish they weren't bringing to the facility. It was killing me to see stock cars going that slow on the main straightaway. But to their credit, it did give us a thrilling battle those last couple of laps. Aric Almirola getting up there and leading at the white flag and then falling back to third. Riley Herbst, I think the overhead shot that NBC was on in the moment didn't really do it justice. You couldn't tell just how sideways he was through turn 4 as he was taking the lead of that race. And then his teammate Cole Custer following him home to also get around Almirola for a second place finish. Brandon, was this Riley Herbst's most impressive moment of his Xfinity Series career, what he did on Saturday?
Well, may not be the most impressive, but it certainly was the most flashy. I mean, this is the most obvious. Hey, this is down to the wire, dueling with Aric Almirola through the short shoot. So I mean, it was very visually appealing to watch, and getting sideways like that coming out of the last corner. That's the way you want to script things, isn't it? I think some of his other victories maybe are a little more. Maybe a bigger accomplishment for his career, like Las Vegas getting his first win. But yeah, this will definitely go down as one of the impressive moments of his career. I don't think I would put it up as the most impressive, but in his mind, it might be completely different because it just the facility being what it is, it means a lot for these drivers, no matter what series it is or anything like that.
Yeah, well, and again, you talk about what it means to win in Indianapolis, what it means to win on the oval. And I know Riley's from Las Vegas, so, I'm sure he holds his home track in high regard as well. But I would imagine that it would probably feel equally as special at the very least, to take your first 2 career wins. I mean, to spank the field at Vegas last year, absolutely dominating fashion, thoroughly deserving victory there, no doubt about it. And then straight up beating 2 Cup Series race winners in Cole Custer and Aric Almirola to get the job done at Indianapolis, the racing capital of the world.
And don't forget to be one of the few to ride the Penske elevator up to victory lane, which hasn't been there very long. So a short list of drivers that can say that they've done that so far.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I know that we got the news this week. I think everybody was expecting that Cole Custer is going to get the Haas factory seat in the Cup Series in 2025. I think the only surprise was that they're sticking with 41 as the car number. A lot of us were expecting he'd bring the 00 with him, but I think Riley Herbst, at the very least, deserves one of those 2 Xfinity Series seats. And if he keeps driving like this, he keeps improving like this, if there's a Cup seat that's open, maybe he should be on some people's short lists, because I think he's improved tremendously over the last couple of years. And again, what better place to prove yourself than the racing capital of the world at IMS, even if some of us think we'd rather see the series down the road at IRP, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we do that, Brandon, I think we have to talk about Shane Van Gisbergen as well, up in fourth place here. Again, I know we have a large viewing audience from Australia, New Zealand. I'm sure that we're very excited to see Shane in what was probably his best oval overall race so far in 2024.
Yeah, that's a great, impressive finish there for SVG, getting in the top 5. He put up some good speed all day. I'm wondering if the package may have helped him get this sort of result. Ben, do you think it might be any easier in that regard to keep your track position or to make track position?
Potentially. But then again, I think, you look at how quickly the top 3 were swapping positions there in the final lap. I think overtaking certainly is possible. And, it takes skill to, angle your arc into the corners, to the best of your ability to be able to try to defend going down the long straightaway. So I think that there's certainly, don't get it twisted. It's not like there's, no talent required. Anybody can go out and hold it wide open or anything like that. I think that, nothing could be further from the truth there. So maybe it benefited Shane's driving style a little bit. I don't know. I'm sure, we'll probably get some comments, in that regard. But Shane's talent is undeniable. There's no argument to that. And I think, again, probably, I know he had the 3rd place finish at Atlanta to start the year, but again, a super speedway drafting track. I think this is absolutely his most impressive finish, and he beat all of his colleague racing teammates. Daniel Dye in that part-time number 10 car, AJ Allmendinger fell back there a bit towards the end. Looked like he might be a threat for the win in the closing stage, but ended up having to settle for 8th. I don't remember off the top of my head where Josh Williams ended up. I know he crashed out in that really bizarre incident with Anthony Alfredo and Parker Retzlaff, but down there in 36th. So unfortunate result for him. But great result for SVG. And again, I think just to show how important winning races is with this system now, SVG was leading. They showed the graphic multiple times during the race. He's the playoff points leader right now with his 3
two races in a row. Yeah,
road course wins. Yeah, road and street course wins, I guess I should say, with Chicago in there. But you only have the Roval in the playoffs. So if Shane is going to be, and would be asking a lot of him, I think, to go out and win a championship as an Xfinity Series rookie his first year over here. But if there were 3 road courses in the playoffs, I wouldn't put it past him. But if he's going to make a deep playoff run at least and turn some heads, and maybe make those Cup Series conversations continue to grow a little bit louder, runs like this will go a long way in doing that. So he said it when I asked him the question, which ovals do you feel most confident at being able to have a shot at taking the win? He just said the left-handed ones. He wants to continue to go out there every single week and prove a point. And he certainly did that on Saturday.
To his credit, at the end of stage 1, he was 16th. At the end of stage 2, 7th, and then ends up with that P4. It's a pretty steady climb, especially from stage 1 to 2.
Yeah. So there you go. He consistently, as the race was going on,
learning,
picking up notes and nuggets and moving up through the field as the race progressed. So, you can't ask for much more than that. All right. Well, again, kind of another open segment here, Brandon. We won't go on for half an hour this time, but I think, this is a conversation that's, really, I guess, ever since 2012, when the Xfinity Series and the Nationwide Series came to the Indianapolis Oval for the first time. Again, knowing how highly we hold IMS in our regards here, do you think you can justify Xfinity Series cars joining the Cup Series on the Brickyard 400 weekend, or would you still rather see, despite the great racing, the great finish that we saw, do you think they should still be down the road at Indianapolis Raceway Park?
It was great, but I think the Xfinity Series has a lot more leeway to be able to experiment with going over to IRP, and I think they should take that opportunity and team up there with the Truck Series and make it a Truck Xfinity kind of weekend for fans just 7 miles west of Speedway. I think they can go back to that and put on a really good show. I'd love to see Xfinity cars once again on a really small place, like stupid small, and it's in the best way because It gives you no room to move. These are big, beefy cars, and we'll get to it with the Truck Series race. I love trucks at IRP. I've enjoyed it since we've started going there again. There's just something about these big, wide vehicles that aren't supposed to be at a place that small, and it makes for some good racing where the groove is on the outside. I think the Xfinity cars would make a great move to experiment going back there. As enjoyable as it was to see him at Indianapolis, it would be nice to go back. That's one thing. That's one thing you can't say about the Cup Series, with them trying to make it to maintain its crown jewel status. You don't have room to experiment right now because you've made this big move, but Xfinity certainly could.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that again, I felt somebody in a group chat I'm in that felt a similar way after Atlanta. Like, it was great to see that 3 wide finish, but still not a fan of this in principle. Not a fan of this package and this style of racing, and I would not want to turn every mile and a half into trying to produce this every week. Yeah, I think we tried that to an extent in 2019. Obviously, it didn't work out very well.
I don't want to go back there, Ben.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does. So in a similar, not an apples to apples comparison, but right here, I don't think that what we saw on Saturday, as great as it was, I don't think that changes my mind. I still think Xfinity should be at Indianapolis Raceway Park, and let again talk about treating the Speedway with the amount of respect that it commands. Send your best to the Brickyard 400 weekend. That would be the NASCAR Cup Series. With all due respect to all the young drivers and all the independents in the Xfinity Series, and I know, but it must be an incredibly special feeling and great honor to be racing at the Indianapolis Oval. Probably would be better for the series and better for the Speedway, for being honest, if they were at IRP.
Yeah, it would give the exclusivity to the Cup race there, but
Sure.
I'm sure there's a whole rabbit hole there. You're probably going into the ticket package deals and all the sorts of things that IMS probably wants to do, and having Xfinity as a part of that is probably really good for them.
Yeah,
but I won't go there.
Yeah, well, but then again, maybe this could be considered hypocritical, because I know you and I have been banging the Save the Freedom 100 drum.
Yep, there's that too. Yep.
Yeah, we want Indy next at the Indianapolis Oval. But I guess the counter to that would be that's IndyCar's home. NASCAR is a guest of the Speedway, and they should send their best. I don't know that that's an apples to apples comparison either, but it is interesting to think about. If only one second tier series could be there, I'd much rather see Indy Next cars running the Freedom 100 than NASCAR Xfinity Series cars running a 250-mile race the day before the Brickyard 400.
Yeah, like we talked about with Jackson last week about having to switch to an aero screen or something like that, or a new version of the Indy Next this design in order to even do that might be a part of that too, the safety factor.
All right, lots to consider there. Let's go over to IRP now and talk about the Truck Series race, and Ty Majeski finally getting that win, solidifying his playoff position. I think it was already pretty much solidified, but now officially official, and couldn't come at a better time. Of course, only one race remaining before the playoffs, and we'll get into that here in just a moment. But Brandon, obviously we've been talking about Corey Heim and Christian Eckes, so the question I have for you here, a little bit of an off weekend for Corey Heim down in 17th, but Eckes continuing that top 3 streak with a second place finish. We think those are the top 2 favorites. When you look past those two, is Majeski the one that's in the best position to potentially play spoiler should he make it to the championship for Phoenix?
Yes, because I think since he's able to come back and defend his T-Sport 200 victory from last year, well, I think you might see the same result either at Milwaukee with the Laguna 175, or maybe going back to reclaim his victory at Bristol come September. I think either of those could be a very big place for ThorSport and Ty Majeski to get it done again. He's got Nick Sanchez in his way, though, on the playoff picture at the moment, just because of stats alone. But yeah, there's plenty of short tracks coming up still on the calendar. And I still think that's where Ty Majeski is able to shine the most.
Yeah, I think obviously, you have to look at Heim and Eckes as the 2 favorites, but there are a lot of tracks coming up in the schedule that Ty Majeski should be considered a favorite at. And again, you only have to look at last year's finale as proof of this. You get to the championship 4, you've got a fighting shot. And I think the way Majeski's running right now, again, was certainly, I think, the highest driver up in the standings that hadn't won a race yet. Just looking at the top 5 here, I know Sanchez obviously won Daytona, Cruz won Vegas, but those were both very early in the year. Sanchez got Charlotte as well, I guess, not so long ago. But, I think Majeski been knocking on the door. It had several opportunities, finally was able to break through. And again, there's that constant mindset of not wanting to peak too early here. I don't doubt that Eckes and Heim will be able to continue to ride this momentum forward here. But again, not a great result for Corey Heim this weekend in 17th. So, sometimes all it takes, again, is that one race to, slow that momentum a little bit. So it'll be a big test for him coming up at Richmond. Obviously, we know that he's set for the playoffs. It's a much bigger test for some names we'll talk about in just a moment here. But, I think if you're Ty Majeski right now, you have to feel pretty confident about where your team is at. And again, no better time to start racking up wins than right before the playoffs.
Yeah, right towards the end of it. And it really is towards the end for the Truck Series because we have a grand total of 2 races in the month of August, and that includes the regular season finale. We'll crown that at Richmond.
Yeah, 7 races in the playoffs and only 8 left total. Do the math. We're coming up after the Olympic break to the cutoff race at Richmond, and Brandon, taking a look at the cutoff line right now. Stuart Friesen, a driver that's flirted with the championship 4 many times in the past, and had a shot to potentially put his name in the record books as a Truck Series champion. He's on the outside looking in. Matt Crafton, maybe the most surprising. He's 43 points back. He is almost certainly in a must-win situation there. And then you have some drivers like Lane Riggs that we had very high expectations for heading into this year. But then again, looking at drivers that are just on the inside that could fall out. Tanner Gray's right on that bubble. Ben Rhodes, the defending champion. There's no guarantee that he'll be able to lock in. So
that's so funny. I'm sorry. It's so funny that Ben Rhodes is the defending champion.
2 of the last 3.
I know.
2 of the last 3.
He's sitting 9th right now. I think one of the most disappointing though is Lane Riggs back there in 16th. I really expected. I think we all kind of expected a lot more from front row, especially after Zane Smith and him stepping into that ride. One I'm proud of is Rackley War and Ty Dillon though. Even making an appearance in 19th. Certainly 114 points back. It's a must win, a long road to go, but even making an appearance is pretty cool for them.
Yeah. This is the simplest playoff grid / standing side by side comparison that we've ever seen, I think, because if you look at the standings, you swap Heim is first on the playoff grid because he has more wins. Eckes has more total points. Although I think, if you take away this mediocre result at IRP and the disqualification in Charlotte, Heim would be sitting at number 1 there as well. But you look past the reverse aspect of those two, the rest of your top 3 are Ty Majeski, Nick Sanchez, Roger Carruth. Those are the series regulars that have won races this year. And then it's Tyler Ankrum, who's 6th in both the straight up point standings and the playoff grid. And then Empinger 7th, Gray 8th, Rhodes 9th, and so on and so forth, obviously, because it's not like we have somebody down in 18th that took a shock win at Daytona or something that's spoiling the playoff grid here. It's very straightforward. And I think that, again, unless somebody like a Chase Purdy or a Dean Thompson or a Ty Dillon shocks the world and wins this Richmond race and completely spoils things, that battle for 10th in the points is probably going to be the battle to get into the playoffs as well. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on it. But again, how many years in a row we talked about Matt Crafton's longevity and his consistency. I'm just pulling up his stats here. You have to go back to 2006. That was the last time that he finished lower than 9th in the Truck Series points. If he does not go out and win this Richmond race, and he has not won in a very long time in this series, he's been able to get in on points for the last several years. He's probably not going to be able to do that this year. the highest he's going to be able to finish is 11th, and it's going to go down as his weakest season in quite a while in this series. So a lot riding on Richmond for Matt Crafton for sure.
Yeah, and it's been a slow downshift, hasn't it, for Matt Crafton? I think we've kind of been seeing this one coming for the past couple of years.
Yeah, and again, only one top 5 so far this year, and you look past that Kansas win in 2020, only one win in the last 7 seasons for Crafton. You have to go back to Eldora 2017 for his second to last victory in the Truck Series. So, but again, he manipulated the system, did everything he needed to do to get to Homestead in 2019 and win a championship as well. So, again, it's you bring up Ben Rhodes, you bring up Matt Crafton. This system allows you to, work it to your advantage and to your strengths and take advantage of that and come out on top. So I think we have to look at Heim and Eckes as the 2 favorites, but after that, it is thoroughly unpredictable. And even with that, it's thoroughly unpredictable. Who knows what's going to happen as we get ready for Truck Series playoffs here.
Right.
All right, we move on now. We'll stay in IRP and go through the ARCA and ARCA East combo race results here real quick. Connor Zilisch remains perfect in 2024. And how do you like this? If he hadn't had that broken sway bar in Watkins Glen in his debut last year and hadn't gotten past coming to the checkered flag by Jesse Love, he would be 4 for 4 in his first career ARCA National starts at taking the checkered flag and winning the race. So again, you can't speak highly enough of Zilich's talent. I think he's arguably, along with William Sawalich, the brightest prospect in the ARCA platform right now. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in a not too distant future here as he turns 18 and gets ready to be able to run some of these bigger tracks.
Yeah, I'm honestly scared to see Connor Zilisch move up through the ranks. He's going to be very deadly for sure.
Yeah, so a great result for him and a good result for Andres Perez as well in second, opening up his championship lead. The East Series championship picture, interesting to look at as well. With Zilisch and Sawalich being the 2 front runners there. But again, I think Zilisch winning the last 3 races in a row might be establishing himself as the favorite in that battle. Got about looks like a 23-point lead, if my quick math in my head is correct. So certainly in prime position. But again, it's all combo races from here on out. So, we'll go to the second page of the results here. 31 cars here for a standalone East race would be almost unheard of these days. But these are East Series races with the combo races. So there's certainly the potential to lose a lot of points as well if you can't finish these races, if you have some sort of a problem. So as long as Zilisch is able to bring the car home in one piece, I think we expect him to be up in the top 3, if not taking the win. And he should be able to say he's got one hand on a championship. But again, all it's going to take is, one poor showing or accident or mechanical issue and could change the entire complexion of that championship fight as well. So we'll keep our eye on that. And Brandon, I don't know if you have any final thoughts on ARCA. Otherwise, I'll roll through the Hungary results real quick.
Let's go on to Hungary.
All right. So we had Formula 2 and Formula 3 back again this weekend, and congratulations to Kushmani on taking the sprint race win. Victor Martins and Isaac Hadjar rounded off the podium there in the sprint race, and Andrea Kimi Antonelli perhaps making the claim for an F1 seat and justifying the hype a little bit more, taking his second win in the feature race. So congratulations to him. I still think even Antonelli himself has said this, probably a little bit premature to be talking about Mercedes seat at this point. Maybe there's some possibility with Williams. We don't know what they're going to do with their 2025 seat, but I would at least hope that he finishes out this Formula 2 season and Logan Sargent finishes out the F1 season before he gets such a promotion. But I think now he's gotten the weight off his shoulders of not even having a podium really the first half of the year. Now he's starting to rack off a couple of victories, maybe the hype a little bit more justified. We'll see if he can make a late championship surge or anything like that, but still good result for him nonetheless. And finally, we'll take you through the F3 sprint race results here real quick. Nikita Bedrin winning the sprint, and onto the second page of those results here. And then over in the feature, Nikola Solov winning that race, Noel Leon and Leonardo Fornaroli taking the final 2 spots in the podium in the feature. And real quickly, we'll show you the remainder of the results there as well. Stay tuned and stand by for future Encore episodes. We've got, of course, one more race weekend at Spa. But for the rest of our series, we're getting ready for this Olympic break here. Indy Next won't be back for a few weeks, nor will the NASCAR races. So we'll see what we do next week here. But I think everybody at Grid Network even looking forward to taking a couple of weeks off for the Olympic break. It's been a constant stretch of a lot of different shows, a lot of different things going on. So we need some rest just as much as these drivers and teams do. So if we get any earth-breaking news next weekend at Spa or with any of the other series we cover, we'll see. We might try to throw something together, but I would imagine we're going to take a couple of weeks off for the Olympics ourselves here. So we'll stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I know definitely Ben here deserves some rest here. So let's give it to him, and then also let's take our Olympic break and enjoy Team USA and all the things we're going to be competing in.
Yeah, and again, also another short programming note here as well. May not see me on the wrap-up shows as often going forward. I think what I have discovered is that trying to run this show on Mondays, do my NASCAR ARCA articles on most Tuesdays, doing Women in Motorsports on Wednesday or Thursday in the middle of the week, frequently being a guest contributor on Grid Tonight. I like having my weekends, and I'm sure there are going to be this weekend in particular is a perfect example. There are certainly times where I have a strong enough opinion and I don't want to wait 24 hours to give it. So I'm not totally closing the door on wrap up, but probably going to take it out of my regular rotation of shows here at the Grid Network for at least the immediate future here when we get past the Olympic break. So just a short programming note for everybody in that regard. Nothing changing here at Encore for the time being, though. Still going to be Monday nights at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. Figure out your time zones from there. And covering the same series that we love to keep an eye on every single week here on the Encore show. So that's not going to change at all. But like Brandon said, and Brandon, I'm sure you're feeling it too. Definitely well-deserved a couple of weeks of rest coming up for everybody in the motorsports community here. F1's got their summer break coming up, and then obviously an Olympic break, 2 whole weeks off for NASCAR teams. Kind of unprecedented in the modern era.
Yeah, nowhere near as beaten down as the rest of you. This is kind of just where I live on Monday nights. So a little more gas in the tank, but I'm happy to take the 2 weeks as well and enjoy Spa-Francorchamps when we get there next weekend.
Yeah. Well, but you've been busy with your radio station and
that goes all the time. So,
yeah, that never changes. Yeah. But again, I've got a 9-to-5 job myself here. So, this is a passion project for all of us. And we thank you all for tuning in every week. Really means the world to us. And on that note, let's end the show on a more positive note, because I know obviously we had a tough conversation in the first half of the show, but what's your one shining moment from the weekend, Brandon, the return of the Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis?
Yeah, it's not hard to pick this one for this weekend. You got to go with Stewart-Haas Racing and the 1-2 finish for Riley Herbst and for Cole Custer. I mean, given the past few weeks of turmoil and shutting down their doors at the end of the year, they turned the switch on for Xfinity. I mean, Ford finally getting their win with Cole Custer last weekend at Pocono, and then coming here with a 1-2, give your other teammate a win. So we'll see if they keep that going. That's some good news there for Stewart-Haas Racing and their twilight season.
Yeah, well, you certainly took mine, but again, I think it was fairly obvious. One shining moment. Perfectly okay, though. Thoroughly deserved for Riley Herbst and Cole Custer. To build on that, I'm going to give a one shining moment to the second 2, if you will, as well. The entire top 4, I think. Aric Almirola, I know there was some controversy with what happened with his Xfinity Series schedule at JGR. But again, if the race had been 1 lap shorter, we'd be talking about him as a winner on the Indianapolis Oval now as well. So he continues to have strong runs whenever he gets the opportunity in that Gibbs car. So congratulations, Alt. And Shane Van Gisbergen as well. Very solid result for him. And again, I think just yet another sign that he's continuing to pick this up just as fast as I think a lot of us knew he could. And great result for him in 4th place. We'll see if he can build on that for the ovals in the rest of the season here. So that is going to do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for tuning in as always, and be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube and follow us on all of our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Thank you all again for 1,000 subscribers. Join us on the road to 2,000 if you haven't already. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show to consider joining our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in the Grid Network to help not only keep us on the air throughout 2024, but help us get to the track to cover races on site on a more regular basis. And that will only expand the coverage that we're providing for you, the viewers. You can also become a member of the Grid Network YouTube channel now as well, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow this motorsports media outlet. Or, like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, we now have the Super Chats enabled as well. Now, on Wednesday, don't miss Grid Tonight, a bit of a return to your usual schedule and programming over there. Joshua Birch is hopefully going to be back with us with some reports from the Superbikes coverage that he's been doing the last couple of weeks. Matt White will be back with Kobe Lambeth as well. Women in Motorsports will be back this week. I know we took last week off, but we're working on figuring out a time to tape that, so stay tuned for that later in the week as well. Lots to talk about over there. And then stay tuned for more coverage from the Grid Network. As always, we have F1 coming up in Spa, so I'm sure we're going to do some coverage of that this weekend. But again, keep an eye on our social media. We'll keep you all informed as to what the plan is for the next couple of weeks, because like we were talking about before the one shining moment, I think a lot of us looking forward to the break coming up. So Brandon, on that note, any final thoughts before we sign off? More than likely for a couple of weeks here on the Encore show.
Go USA, and whatever country you're from, we wish the best for your team as well if you're into that. And also, yeah, the motorsports world is so spur of the moment. So if anything comes up, we will be here. So have a great Olympic break.
Yeah, looking forward to cheering on Team USA for sure. And I got to say, the basketball team, the men's basketball team at least, has been making me a little bit nervous with some of these showcase exhibitions. They just squeezed it out again against Germany earlier today. But fitting that nearly 40-year-old LeBron James is going to be the flag bearer, because he has now bailed out Team USA twice here in these exhibitions.
South Sudan as well?
South Sudan, yes.
Yeah.
43 and a half.
Brand new country.
The newest country in the world, yes. Yeah. And all credit to them, by the way. They thoroughly deserve all the credit in the world for giving Team USA a run for their money. But at the same time, we are, when it comes to basketball in this country, the U.S. is expected to win gold. So we'll see. Hopefully they can iron out any chemistry issues they're having. And again, we wish the best for everybody in Team USA as we look forward to the Paris Olympics coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So we hope you all enjoy that. We hope you all enjoy the break from the motorsports coverage. But we'll see you as soon as we get back from the Olympic break. For Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good rest of your week and have a good break, everybody.